Welcome to the What's Your Ceiling podcast. We're your hosts, Monty Wyatt and Paul Szynski. Wherever you are in life, there is a higher ceiling. This podcast is how you become aware of it and how to take action to push through it. It's time to discover your ceiling. Welcome to the What's Your Ceiling podcast, where we talk about your health, your family, your business. I'm Monty Wyatt, and I am looking forward to today's guest. He is the president of a 115-year-old family and employee-owned business out of Ames, Iowa. They've got 3 locations here in Iowa: Ames, Carroll, and Waterloo. And little history here. We both went to Iowa State about the same time, and so he's done some wonderful things, and look forward to a great conversation on his family and how he's progressed and continued to grow the family business. So with that, I want to welcome Chris Nelson. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hello, glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. You know, I always like to start with a topic of the show, and I want to get your viewpoint of what comes to mind when I say this phrase. But I think you're a good example of family history. So when you hear the phrase family history, what comes to mind for you?
Oh, we have a long family history. So we have a history of community service. We have a history of being in Ames in the central Iowa area. We have a history of working together as a family. There's a lot to unpack there.
Oh, that's wonderful. You know, I love to hear that you tied both community service and family and a third point than the business. You know, so it's a lot of different things. So I love to hear that, and I love to hear more of the story of your family as we get started. And you know, just you studied a lot. You're an engineer by trade, right?
Yes.
Tell us how you went from how you got into engineering first, and maybe how you made it back to the family business.
Oh boy, well, this goes back to my senior year of high school, and I had a chemistry teacher who I really liked, and had a great time in the class, did really well, and I thought maybe chemistry is where I want to go. And my lab partner, who was a good friend of mine, we're talking in class one day about what she wanted to do, and she said chemical engineering, and I'm like, "There's a chemical engineering? That would tie chemistry and engineering together. I'm in." So that was kind of the direction that I went right out of school. Eh, chose to go to Iowa State. Did the chemical engineering track, and for a couple of reasons coming out kind of the tail end of that experience, there was a little dip in the job market, and a little bit of self-reflection about what I wanted to do long term, that I actually decided to just continue right on into graduate school and get a degree in construction engineering.
What made you interested in construction?
Well, when I graduated from high school, the last thing I wanted to do was work for the family business or in construction. So that also played into the chemical engineering side of thing, was that if I do that, I don't have to go back to work for the business. Um, but like I said, self-reflection kind of got me back around to, I do like to build things, and um, buildings are much more physical things to be building than products or chemical products. So I thought, gosh, maybe that's the direction I'll go. Maybe I'll go build chemical plants. That would be kind of a good way to mesh the two of them together. Um, but the more I got into the construction side of things, the more I realized, I really want to do this.
And then
It took 7 years, but
took 7
came
years to
around.
figure it out. That's wonderful. Now, what did you do before you came back to the family business?
Well, when I graduated from Iowa State with my construction engineering degree in '98, I went to work for a decent sized firm by Iowa standards, general contractor in Chicago, that did a lot of historical renovations of buildings to kind of downtown in the Loop, which was of particular interest to me at the time. So I worked on several buildings in the Loop, did some high-rise work, built a research and development facility for craft foods. And after doing well, I need to back up a minute because in between those two things, I got married, which is also very important in this whole life story. Um, so my wife and I moved to Chicago. We were there for a couple of years. We kind of got involved with I don't want to use the term rat race, but I'm going to, where we had the commutes that were an hour long in stop and go traffic. We were working long hours, and we got to the point where we wanted to buy a house, start a family. Had the opportunity to come back to Central Iowa with a company I had a prior relationship with, and decided to jump on that. We weren't quite ready to move back to Ames, so we went to Des Moines, where I spent 9 years working for another general contractor, the White's Company, um, in in an interesting role because it was more in the corporate office and the IT side of things. And I was kind of the person who was a liaison between the operations and the IT people. So I knew the construction, I learned the IT, and well, stuck there for a number of projects. Got a lot of really neat things done. Got to travel all over the country, work on some really interesting projects. Um, and then in 2008, my uncle was looking at retiring, and I got to really do some soul searching and say, you know what, if he sells out, I don't know what's going to happen to the company. So maybe that's something I should look at doing.
So how'd you make that decision? Because I'm sure that's a tough decision. Do you go off and stay doing the corporate world activities, or do you go back in the family business? How'd you make that decision?
Exactly, that's a big jump. I was fairly comfortable where I was at and moving into something that had a lot more risk and volatility to it. And once I put a timeline to it, you'll see that, boy, I don't know what I was thinking. I bought into a construction company in 2008, right as the economy was slowing significantly. Uh, so it was, but looking back on that, it really came down to I was looking for a new challenge, um, I- and realized, like I said, if my uncle sold out, my dad was still in the business. I didn't know what the long term plan for the company was, and I thought, I need to go try this. And if I don't like it, hey, I tried. If I do, great. And well, that was 15 years ago, so it trended towards great.
Well, congratulations. And you've recently been named president of Nelson Electric, is that right?
Yeah, earlier this year, my dad stepped away from ownership interest in the business. My brother is now involved. So between the two of us and a handful of other employee shareholders, we now have gone on to the next generation of ownership in the business. And like you said, it's our 115th year this year, and so I hope to be around to celebrate many more.
Oh, that's wonderful. Tell us how it's like working with family members, because it's sometimes it can be challenges, sometimes it can be a lot of fun. How do you separate being family and being coworkers?
My mother helps with that a lot. Whenever we're together as a family, no shop talk. It doesn't stop it completely, but it does do a pretty good job. The other part of it is we all do really get along, and we all have our own areas of expertise. So we don't step on each other's toes because of that. I have my role even when my dad was in the company, and he's still an employee, although an employee with a completely different employee handbook than everybody else.
Right.
Um, he has his role, my brother has his role, and so we're able to get opinions and ask questions of each other, but we're not necessarily doing the same things, so we're not um, stepping on each other's toes or pulling things in different directions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, part of our audience is called the achiever. and our show is "What's Your Ceiling?" So I'd love to hear a story of how you had to grow to become president. What did you have to learn or change in your behavior again to work with family members, but also to lead your company? How did you have to grow? What did you have to change in?
Well, the good part about that is it was all pretty gradual, so I didn't have to make any real big changes to make that shift. It was comfortable for everybody, which I think helped me. It helped the employees. It helped everybody through that transition. But over that period of time where I came back, we grew significantly. We did not have the office in Carroll or Waterloo when I first started, so we started those divisions about a year after I came back to work for the company. So we had to learn a lot about having multiple sites, managing offsite people. Um, Personally, what I've kind of learned through the whole thing is the importance of communication.
Mm.
Um, Definitely is a big part of that, and making sure you have the right team in place. That one sometimes took me a little bit longer than it should have to learn, but valuable lessons learned there on several occasions.
So you're
Um,
saying you've kept employees longer than you should have?
Sometimes, yes.
Oh, that's
Uh,
good.
but you get through those first one or two of those, and then you start to see a pattern, and you realize afterwards that this is a good thing for not only the company but for them too. If it's not something that's benefiting everybody, it's not good for anybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a hard thing for managers and leaders to do is make those tough decisions. But I love how you just said it. It's good for the company, but it's also good for the individual. It always works out best for the individual.
Hmm.
It
That's
may
been
not
my
seem like it at
experience
the
too.
time.
Yes. No, it's still hard. But when it's over, you realize, yes, that was absolutely the right thing to do.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Now, how do you balance your family life and working and doing all this good stuff?
Sometimes I don't do a very good job of that. Um, as a particular example, I served for 6 years on the Ames City Council. I've been off for 4 years now. It was a wonderful experience. I'd like to think I made a positive impact on the community while I was there. But what I didn't realize when I was in the heat of it was how much time I was spending on it. And it wasn't until I was done that I looked back on it and said, "Whoa, I spent so much time on that, perhaps to the detriment of uh, family and the business." So I don't want to say it was bad. It wasn't bad, but it kind of on the business side of things, I think slowed us down. We have since started to ramp back up, but I think it kind of stagnated because I was being pulled too many different directions. So that's a valuable lesson to learn too. Looking back at the family impact of that as I was going through it, I was always looking at it from the perspective of I wanted to show my kids how important it is to be involved and how to make a positive impact in your community. So it was, at least in my head at that point in time, leading by example and setting the stage for uh, my next generation to want to be a positive impact in whatever they decide to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. That's good to balance the life, but it is hard. It definitely is hard, and I think we can all say that it's the self reflection that I love how you've said that a couple of times. Self reflection on wow, I did spend a lot of time there, but it's the impact that you hopefully made on a lot of people.
Yeah, and in the end, you do have to set priorities and s- stick to those. Choose what's important, and now I think I've reevaluated all that and doing the right things. still involved in the community in a lot of ways, but spending a lot more time with work and family.
Well, that's good. That's good. Tell us a little bit about the culture of Nelson Electric and how you've built that because it's family owned and it's employee owned, but it's a culture of that family. So tell us a little bit more about that culture and how you've created the culture.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that we've been able to stick around for as long as we have in a particularly competitive industry is that we do treat our people really quite well, and that's important to us. A good example here, I could tell you that as the market the last couple of years has been very tight for most companies to find labor, and it caused a lot of people to look for other opportunities. You had the Great Resignation, and we weren't immune to that. And we went through a period of time, a little over a year ago, where we had a number of people leave just because they thought the grass would be greener. Um, every single person that left is now back working for us.
That's wonderful.
So I think that was um, reaffirming that we're doing things what we consider to be the right way, and what other people consider to be the right way is you have to take care of your people.
So I love that. Go a little deeper. What do you think caused them to come back to you? I want our achievers to hear some of the things that worked to cause you to attract them back.
Um, the environment, the construction can generally it can be not as flexible. It's in a lot of ways a production job, and but with the size that we are and the types of opportunities we've had, we've been able to put those people in the right places. If there's someone who needs to come in an hour early and leave an hour early, we can put them on one job, or we can put them on a particular customer's site, or we can work around them. If they want to work overtime, they have those choices. So there's options, there's choices, there's flexibility, and there's culture. We had at least two people come back just saying, "Wow, it didn't realize how good it was until we were someplace else."
Hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. That's a great feeling, isn't it?
It was. It was really terrible as it was happening. It was really great as it resolved itself.
Oh, that's I love to hear that when people come back, they say it wasn't as green as what we thought it was, and we really missed this. So congratulations. I think that's very
Yeah,
cool.
thank you.
Yeah. Now, how many employees are you up to?
Between the three offices, we bounce between 65 and 75
And
total employees.
majority of your work is commercial?
Yep, most of it's commercial, light industrial, medical, institutional, schools, hospitals, a lot of churches. We actually do a lot of fraternity and sorority work at Iowa State. Not very much residential or multifamily residential. So, as of recent times, it's been good for us that we're not in that, as the economic conditions have changed in residential construction.
Yep.
So far, so good on that front.
That's right. That's right. Oh, that's good. So what's the next step for Nelson Electric? Where are you taking the company?
Well, I've spent the last few months trying to get my feet underneath me. We started a strategic planning process actually about a month before COVID, and so that whole process kind of got stunted. Then, as we worked through the transition, it just kind of with the uncertainty and things, it kind of fell through the cracks. So we're going back to that strategic planning process and getting all of our our management team and stakeholders together, and deciding what direction that is. We we would very much like to increase our footprint in a very general way, do more work, organic growth, figure out different maybe market sectors, slightly different products that maybe we subcontract currently that we currently do. So there's several reasons for doing that, and part of that is a renewed focus on providing opportunities for people. Sometimes people do leave, and it's because maybe they think there's better opportunity. There's maybe a chance to get promoted to something else. Well, we want to make a more conscious effort to create those opportunities internally for people. Keep them engaged, give them experiences, let them learn new things, just to keep them excited about being around and productive.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. You know that you're sounds like you're putting your people first, and I think that's a big thing that I want our achievers to really think about. It's the culture that you're creating. It's how you're treating people, how you to help them think about their future. So you're putting people first, and that's a big thing for organizations today, I believe.
It is. It is. We just had this conversation in the office yesterday morning. As a group, we were just talking about opportunities, and there were two or three people in the room that both said, including the facilitator, that talked about how they left jobs because they didn't feel like they had opportunities going forward.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, good. Well, any other stories that you want to share of you breaking through your ceiling and changing the way that you thought or changing the way that you worked as to grow as a leader? Because I think that's important for us to hear how you've grown in becoming a leader of your organization.
Sure. I guess I can think of two offhand. One is that I generally tend to be data driven. It's important for me to, and the reason for that is to show that there are benefits to doing things. If you can demonstrate to people that, hey, this is a good thing, we've improved a process, we're more profitable, we're safer, we're doing these things better, that whole continuous improvement piece, it's not big changes, it's a bunch of little ones that eventually add up to something. So that's something that we've been focusing on for several years now, and it's one of those things where you make a bunch of little changes, you don't really see how far you've come unless you go back and kind of look back and reflect about how bad things were. That's not quite maybe the right way to put it, but as an example of that, we had a warehouse that was darn near unusable because it had so much old material in it that just came back from a job site and died. And it took us months to clean the warehouse out, but it just got better for everybody now that you could see stuff, you could find stuff, you can move stuff around. So finding that low-hanging fruit, and just, what can you improve? No one remembers how dirty the warehouse or how cluttered the warehouse used to be anymore. I wish we had pictures, because now when the warehouse is messy, it's not anywhere near as bad as it used to be. But there's a lot of examples of things like that will never be done doing, quite honestly. I mean, there's always something that you can improve upon. And that whole communication as to why, and it's hard to get over that hump of telling somebody that this is new, this is the way we're going to do it. You have to explain what's in this for them, what's in it for the company. In a way, people can take it that, well, I've been doing this wrong all the time, and that's not necessarily the case. It's just that this is even better, and here's why, and here's the data that shows it. And sometimes you have to experiment, sometimes it doesn't work, and you go back to the old way.
I love how you said that. You got to have the data, but you also got to tell the why behind it. Change is an amazing thing. Nobody wants to change, but they want things to improve.
Yes. And change is hard.
Change is
When I first came back in 2008, there was a particular form, it was a yellow work order form that literally hadn't changed since 1963. It was the same form. Maybe we should look at this one.
What's 40 or 50 years? We don't need to change something. It's working. So tell us more about that because change is a fun thing. How do you get buy-in from your team?
It's that communication. It's getting together as a group on a routine basis and talking through things and getting ideas from them as well. I'm definitely not the person who knows everything in the room, but there's a lot of things you can learn from people that actually do that particular task or that hold that particular job, and um, they know how to do things. They know how to do things better. So how can you pick that and communicate it to everybody else?
Absolutely.
Where are people's pain points? We have oh, trying to remember what it's called now, but we went through a session a few years ago. Basically, what frustrates me, and we put together a list of what frustrates people, and that's what we worked on.
I love that. I love that. I want to reinforce a couple things that you just said. And when you get buy-in, it is about getting ideas from others. We don't have to have all the answers. And I think that's a critical thing for a leader to get buy-in is letting the team share their ideas and using their ideas. And they may or may not work, but it's getting them engaged. It's getting them input. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. I love how you got buy-in.
I'm not perfect at it, but it's definitely something that we pay attention
Absolutely.
to.
Absolutely. Oh, that's wonderful. I really appreciate the conversation, and I think you've shared some great stories. What would your was it your great grandfather that started it?
Yes. Yep. And the short story about that is that was back in 1908, and prior to 1908, in the city of Ames, the city and the power plant actually is who wired your houses. So it wasn't open to private industry. It was the city that actually did that work, and it was in 1908 that they decided to open that up to private contractors. My great grandfather actually worked for the city, the power plant at the time, and so he quit that and started the company as soon as they opened it up to private competition.
Oh, that's a great story. What would you hope your great grandfather would say now about the business?
Uh, Boy, the industry on the whole is unrecognizable, pretty much compared to how he used to do it with some of the hand tools that he had, which we still have. Uh, Pulling his stuff around in a horse and buggy, we have a picture of that too. Uh, so just the technology change would probably for him. Even the technology change in the last 50 years with my dad being there has changed a lot. So I think he'd be really happy to know that the company's still here, that the family is still involved, that we're still maintaining those same values that we did or that he did when he was running the company.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. You know, a couple questions I ask all of our guests. Number one is what's something you'd like to be known for? Of all the activities
Mm-hmm.
that you're doing, what would you like to be known for?
In broad terms, I just want to be recognized as someone who made things better, be that at work or in the nonprofit world, or like I talked about with the council service politically, although that's as high as my political ambitions go. And I do that through lifelong learning and talking to people and just not giving up. Uh, you have to learn from your mistakes. Uh, that's the path to making things better. That's, I know, a very broad statement, but it's depends on what world you're living in at that particular point in time.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I appreciate your insight, your stories, and a little bit of your history. And I wish you continued success in leading the business. And so, anything else you'd like to tell our achievers, our audience, before we say goodbye here today?
I guess always stay curious. You can always learn something new.
Absolutely. Be curious and not judgmental, right?
Yes.
Well, Chris, thank you for joining us on the show. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate the stories. And if our audience wants to get a hold of you to help them with any of their electrical needs, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Our website is www.nelsonelectric.biz.
Awesome.
Happy
Awesome.
to talk to anybody.
Very good. Well, Chris, thank you for joining us on the show. And I want to challenge our achievers to a number of things that Chris shared with us. I think he mentioned the communication, the importance of communication, recognizing the time being spent in different things and reflecting and recognizing it. Sometimes you spend too much time there. I loved your data-driven changes that you make and understanding the why. And I love your strategic planning process that you're getting back into, because I think that's a critical thing for all businesses to do. So I want to encourage our achievers, our audience, to like this episode. I want you to subscribe and keep listening to our great guests and keep learning from our guests. So, Chris, thank you for joining us. And to our audience, keep growing and learning.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Ronnie.
You are welcome.